Mark Lackey is here, CHF Capital Markets, talking about a Palladium. And I was searching for a price during the break there, and I think it's just under $800, right?
That's right, Pat. And it's interesting because if we go back a year ago this time, it was at $600. So we've had a $200 move, a 33% increase. And yet I'm still finding a lot of people on the street who say to me, Mark, it can't hold up there because look at it trades. It's been highly correlated with gold and silver in past years. And it's a precious metal, so it's going to follow the same trend. But I think what people are missing, Pat, is that the trend has broken. I don't think you can follow that relationship to the same degree anymore. There is uses for palladium in jewelry, admittedly, where it competes against gold and silver. But, I mean, because of the catalytic converter in particular, used in automobiles, I think that demand factor has, greatly divorced palladium from gold.
Just on the jewelry front, it's used in white gold, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, Pat, and an interesting point because white gold's done fairly well recently. Now, one reason has been the import on gold tax that exists in India, so there has been some movement away from gold to palladium because of that issue. But we were finding that more and more people were moving to white gold because they like how it looks, and it is cheaper. After all, palladium is still considerably cheaper than gold.
Yeah, overall. Okay, let's get to the industrial uses. Catalytic converters, primary automotive?
That's right, Pat. And I think the important thing here is that we've talked about this before. If you look at China, they're building 20 million cars this year. We assume 22 million next year. In China right now, it's about 80 cars per 1,000 people.
Yeah. In
North America, it's about 800 vehicles per 1,000 people. And in India, it's only 25 cars per 1,000 people. So when you look at China and India, and I'm not saying they'll end up being like North America, maybe they end up like Europe, which is about 500 per 1,000, about 1 and 2. Look at the tremendous growth potential there is there for these rising middle classes. So I see big growth in automobile production in the next number of years. And in India right now, it's up 16% year over year. There were some tax cuts by the new prime minister. So I think there's a great demand here for palladium from the catalytic converter, which of course, as you know, even India and China have the same standards as the rest of the world. They all want cleaner air, so the catalytic converters are put in all these vehicles.
Yeah. At least for the time being, they want those. I mean, you got to have an economic recovery continuing in both China and India for that to play out, right?
I agree, Pat, and I will say this, that the people that are worried about, maybe we get 7% instead of 7.5 for China, again, I go back to my point that you have to look at the micro aspects. There is big growth in vehicle production. Right now, furniture sales are weak, so maybe you don't want to be in the lumber market, but in the sectors that are doing very well that we expect will continue to do well, those are the commodities you should be concentrating on. Too many people try to put all the commodities in the same basket. You can't do that.
Fair enough. What about the supply side of palladium?
Well, and the other thing, Pat, is we're the two biggest producers of palladium in the world. South Africa, which we know has had labor problems, there's been electricity problems, and political problems. And then Russia's the other situation where recently, as we all know with the Ukraine, again, more political problems. So people are scrambling in the palladium markets. There is some palladium obviously produced in North America and South America, but by and large, the biggest production comes from two countries where future supply is going to be limited in our view.
Okay, so then you've got three ideas in this space. Wall bridge mining. I don't think we've done this one before.
So we mentioned it once, Pat, but it's been a while. And Wallbridge, Pat, what's interesting here is in the last week they had some great news. Lonman, their partner, gave them $5.5 million extra to do more exploration. They had some great drilling results last week. And the third thing was they sent their first shipments out and they bought back $4.7 million from the smelter. So you would think with all that great news, you'd see a lift in the stock price. Now, it went sideways, which shows you that in the short run, people still either are timid on small caps or they aren't sold on the palladium price, or maybe some combination thereof. But when you get those kind of numbers, those kind of news results, I'm impressed because to me, again, management's meeting milestones, and I keep saying to people, that's really critical that people recognize when a good management team, and their production, of course, is out of Sudbury, so it's in a very good location, and they're meeting all their milestones. This is a company people should certainly have on their radar screen, because I ultimately believe palladium prices will go higher, and that this company will benefit from those higher prices and the fact that they're doing quite well in terms of their production.
Okay, but they are producing as it stands currently. Is this a potential takeover candidate too? I mean, or does that happen in precious metals?
Well, in palladium, the last takeover that we did see was in Northern Ontario. by the biggest palladium, one of the big palladium players, Stillwater. So I'm sure Stillwater and a few of the other fairly big players, they're well aware of probably all three of the companies we're mentioning today, because there aren't a whole lot of mid-size or smaller palladium plays in North America. And I don't know that Stillwater's looking in South Africa, for example. I would think that they would probably stay close to home.
For all the reasons we mentioned.
Right.
North American Palladium, we have talked about before.
That's right, Pat. And North American Palladium is a producer. It's in Northern Ontario. Again, it's another one of those situations where I think palladium prices were kind of stagnant for quite a while, and so people kind of lost interest in the palladium space. But with the price up as much as it is, again, I'm a little bit surprised more people haven't maybe gravitated towards this company because there is production. I see them being able to increase production and lower costs. They've got a good management team. But, I would say to these companies, keep doing what you're doing, because ultimately I believe markets do get it right. It's sometimes longer with smaller caps because there's fewer people following them, for one thing.
That's true of many small caps.
It is.
I forgot to ask you about management at Wallbridge.
Yeah, it's a very strong management team, Pat. I like the board. I like the management team. And as I said, they told me this year what they were going to do, and they've reached all the milestones. And in fact, the recent money from Lawnman I wasn't expecting. So they've actually got more money coming in than I anticipated. So I like what they've done there. I think it's just a question, again, of people starting to recognize that the palladium price is going to stay higher and go higher, that this is one of the few companies that's got production.
Yeah.
That's in North America.
Well Green Platinum.
Yeah, it's interesting. They call themselves a platinum play. Yeah. It's actually a combination of platinum and palladium. It's in the Yukon. Now, they're not producing, Pat. This is a more of a drilling and exploration company. But I like it because there aren't that many of this magnitude out there that aren't in Russia or South Africa. So this is a good play. If you want to play a driller as opposed to a producer, this is where I would go. I think that there's some great upside here. They're in the part of the Yukon where there's all kinds of infrastructure. That's not an issue. It's another very good experienced management team. And so I think that, if you want to play one that'll have production down the road, this is where I would go.
Okay. Mark, great to have you.
It's great to be here, Pat.
Mark Lackey.